Who the hell do you think you are? Trying to play the part of a CEO's wife. What have you ever done? Sign these divorce papers. Now? Those were the words my mother-in-law spat at me as she unceremoniously threw a thick envelope at my face, right after my husband's business finally hit the big time. After 10 years of a marriage where he hadn't contributed a single dollar to our living expenses, the moment he found success, he was ready to toss me aside like an old shoe. We'll give you $50,000 as a settlement. Just take it and disappear. The sheer audacity of it made me burst out laughing. Like mother, like son. Did these two ignorant fools really have no idea? The company my husband was now lording over, the designer handbag my mother-in-law was clutching, even the very boxers he was wearing, every last thread of it belonged to me. This is the story of how that shameless mother and son ended up kicked out onto the street in the dead of winter, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Let's begin. And before we do, please hit that like button. I wish you all a day filled with blessings. The winter of 2008, when I was just 11 years old, was exceptionally cold and bleak. I can still see it with perfect clarity. Coming home from school, opening the front door, and seeing the bright red foreclosure notices slapped onto everything. The TV, the refrigerator, even the piano I cherished so much. They were like crimson brands, declaring our home and our life dead. The day my father's construction company went bankrupt in the financial crisis, the quiet happiness of our family was shattered into a million pieces. I remember watching through a crack in my bedroom door as my mother, who used to sip tea with such elegance, clutched the pant leg of the local grocery store owner, her voice cracking as she begged for a little more credit, just for some rice and bread. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, my small fists clenched in helpless rage. My mother's hoarse pleas and the store owner's disdainful glare were seared into my heart like a burn. That night, huddled under my blankets, I made a vow. I would never, ever be humiliated because of money. My sole purpose in life, from that day forward, would be to live without ever having to worry about money again. That was the day my life became a battlefield. Starting in middle school, I worked every part-time job imaginable. While other kids were chasing pop stars, I was climbing endless flights of stairs in apartment buildings, stuffing flyers under doors. I couldn't even afford the textbooks for my classes, let alone join friends for a slice of pizza. When I got into college, the romanticized campus life was a luxury I couldn't afford. My existence was a monotonous cycle between the library and my various jobs. To pay for tuition and my own living expenses, I rarely slept more than 4 hours a night. I was running on pure grit. Perhaps it was fate's cruel joke that he walked into my life then. In a quiet corner of the library's student lounge, I'd often be slumped over a table, fast asleep, the smell of sweat clinging to my worn-out t-shirt. And at the table next to mine, there was always him. He was a student who had just returned to school after a stint in the military, and he seemed to be from a different world. He always carried the scent of fresh espresso, typed away on a brand-new MacBook, a rare sight back then, and wore a gleaming designer watch on his wrist. His easy smile, untouched by the shadow of poverty, made him seem like a creature from another planet. I couldn't help but steal glances at him. One day, as I was picking at a cheap sushi roll from the campus convenience store, he approached me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Leaning his chin on his hand, he watched me with an amused smirk. "You really work hard, don't you?" he said, his lips curling into a grin. "Not like other kids these days. You're a real fighter." I like that. I don't know why that simple compliment hit me so hard. Maybe it was because it felt like someone finally saw the crushing weight of my life. Or maybe I was just thrilled that this handsome, seemingly wealthy prince was paying attention to a nobody like me. We naturally grew closer and started dating. But I should have known then. I should have realized that our relationship was a sandcastle built on a foundation of fantasy. On every single date, with impeccable timing, he would forget his wallet. After we'd finished a meal at a nice restaurant, he'd start patting his pockets with a look of feigned distress, an act so natural I never once suspected it. Oh man, I must have left my wallet in the car. But I used the valet. It's such a hassle to go get it. "Catherine, could you cover it this time? I'll get you something even better next time." Or, at the checkout counter, he'd open his wallet to reveal nothing but a large denomination money order. "Shoot, all I have is this. They probably won't take it here. Do you have any cash on you?" A normal person would have been annoyed, but I was so blinded by infatuation that I mistook his behavior for the casual carelessness of the rich. A man who only carried large checks and never bothered with cash. A man who didn't need to worry about a wallet. That's how I foolishly interpreted it. I would pay for our meals with the money I'd earned through blood, sweat, and tears, and I actually felt proud of myself for it. That was the beginning of my role as his personal ATM, his sugar mama. At the time, I thought it was love. Maybe I desperately wanted to believe that his wealth, or what I perceived as his wealth, was the rope that would pull me out of the suffocating swamp of poverty. It never even occurred to me to suspect that his designer clothes were fakes, or that he was living on credit. In my eyes, he was a prince who had never known hardship, and I was preparing to be the Cinderella he had chosen. Around graduation, he declared that a 9-to-5 job was too mundane for him. He was going to start his own business. While our peers were struggling in a tough job market, his bold pronouncements seemed to me like the confidence of someone with a powerful safety net. The day I took him to meet my mother, who had known nothing but hardship, she saw right through him. She said his eyes were shifty and unfocused, that he was all style and no substance, an empty can. She vehemently opposed our marriage. I should have listened to her sharp intuition. Instead, I dismissed her concerns as a kind of class-based insecurity stemming from our own poor circumstances. When my mother turned her back, sighed, and said marriage was absolutely out of the question, my then-boyfriend stepped outside for a cigarette. I should have stopped everything when I overheard him muttering to himself, "Jesus, is it because they're poor? It's impossible to talk to them. So low class, seriously." Even after hearing that, I pretended I hadn't. Worse, I blamed myself, thinking my family's poverty was the reason we weren't up to his standards. I clung to the delusional hope that if I could just make this marriage happen, I too could live a life of affluence like his. I pushed for the wedding, desperate to escape the reality of our life, to flee the musty smell of our cramped Queens apartment. But the path I chose in a frantic escape from poverty was a gateway to an even deeper hell. It wouldn't take long for me to realize that. During the wedding preparations, the red flags were everywhere. His family had a mountain of expectations for gifts and dowry. But when it came time to find a place to live, he insisted he wanted to make it on his own, without his parents' help, and told me to look into getting a loan. At the time, I didn't recognize how hollow his words were. I just thought he was a man with a strong sense of independence. Of course, I thought, a rich man's son would have a different mindset. The truth was, his family was also drowning in debt, all appearances to the contrary. And my husband? He had zero savings. I found this out only after we returned from our honeymoon and a stack of overdue notices arrived in the mail. I should have known then. This marriage was doomed from the start. I nearly fainted when I went through his bank statements and saw his credit card debt ran into the tens of thousands. When I confronted him, he just got defensive. Sprawled on the sofa, flipping through TV channels, he scoffed. "Look, that's just the cost of doing business. You have to spend money to make money. Once I hit it big, I'll pay all that back and then some. So stop nagging. Are you looking down on me or something?" I was speechless. Doing business? The crushing reality was that all his time working on his laptop in the library had been spent day trading stocks and looking up multi-level marketing schemes. The sense of betrayal was indescribable. But we were already legally married. I didn't have the courage to become a divorcee and return to my family's poverty. I couldn't bear to tell my mother. I knew it would break her heart. So, I decided to endure it. I'll just have to work harder, I told myself. I'll support him and help him become a better man. I gaslighted myself into believing that foolish notion, and I held on. And I can't leave out my mother-in-law. She revealed her true colors the moment we were married. The first time she saw me as her daughter-in-law, she looked me up and down, clicked her tongue, and said something that left me stunned. "It's because you learn nothing from your poor family that you can't help my son succeed. For a man to do great things, his wife needs to be out there earning money and keeping a perfect home. What are you just standing there for? Go peel some fruit." I felt like a criminal as I lowered my head and walked to the kitchen. I told myself this was just how it was, that I would get used to it. But that was only the beginning. My husband continued to play the part of an entrepreneur while living as a jobless bum. Every morning, he'd put on a sharp suit and leave the house, only to spend his days at a local senior center playing chess or getting his head filled with nonsense at some pyramid scheme seminar. I worked as an office manager for a small company during the day, then secretly worked as a waitress at night. On weekends, I drove for a ride-sharing service. With the money I earned, he would go out with his friends, slam his card on the bar, and announce, "Drinks are on me." Thinking about it now, I must have been insane. His friends would say things like, "Man, you really hit the jackpot with Catherine. You're living the good life because of her." And my husband, too clueless to realize they were mocking him, would puff out his chest and come home bragging. "Babe, you should have heard the guys today. They said I have the presence of a real CEO. See? All this networking I'm doing is an investment in our future. You don't see the big picture. That's why you're stuck as a salaried worker your whole life." In that moment, I felt something inside me snap. This man wasn't family. He was a parasite, feeding off my lifeblood. But by then, I was already pregnant. I can't count the number of times during my pregnancy that I regretted not leaving him, even if it meant just getting child support and raising the baby alone. But I didn't want my child to suffer the stigma of having a single mother. I wanted to maintain the facade of a normal family, so I gritted my teeth and endured. When our son was born, the joy was overshadowed by the crushing weight of our financial struggles. There was no money for a postpartum recovery center. I barely had enough to buy beef for the traditional recovery soup. That winter, my mother secretly tucked a wad of crumpled $10 bills into the diaper bag. I hid in the bathroom, muffling my sobs so no one would hear. The self-loathing I felt, being a mother who couldn't even afford formula for her own child, was a cold, sharp pain in my bones. At night, as I tried to soothe our crying baby, my husband would be dead to the world, snoring, or he'd roll over and snap. "Can you shut that kid up? God, it's so annoying." Before pulling the covers over his head, staring at his back, I thought about divorce 1,000 times. But each time, I swallowed the words back down. I didn't want to admit the foolishness of my own choice, marrying to escape poverty. And more than anything, I didn't want my child to be labeled as the kid without a dad. So I endured. 10 years passed like this. A decade of me being the sole breadwinner in a warlike existence. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and my life was pushed to the brink. The small company I worked for went bankrupt. The restaurant where I waitressed at night closed its doors. With next month's rent and my son's tuition looming, and our pantry growing bare, my husband was fused to the sofa, watching the news all day. I was so stressed I felt like I was about to combust. Suddenly, he shot up from the sofa, his eyes gleaming, and grabbed my shoulders. "This is it. This is it. Did you see the news? People aren't going out. So, how are they going to eat? They'll get everything delivered or cook at home. This is our chance. Delivery and meal kits," he said, his eyes wild. "That's the answer." Honestly, when he first brought it up, I thought he was insane and just scoffed. We were about to be evicted, and he was talking about starting a business? I wanted to scream at him, but he clung to me like a hyena that had spotted its prey, a strange confidence radiating from him. He was a credit risk, unable to even open a bank account or get a phone in his own name. He begged me to trust him just this one last time. He half threatened, half pleaded, saying if this didn't work, we might as well all jump off the Brooklyn Bridge together. I felt like I was losing my mind. After being deceived for 10 years, I should have said no. But when you're cornered, you'll grasp at even the most rotten-looking lifeline. In the end, I cashed out my 401, the last safety net I had. I closed the college fund I had been painstakingly contributing to for over a decade. I poured every last cent into his idea. Even that wasn't enough. I sat at a bank, my hand trembling so violently as I signed the papers for a $50,000 business loan in my name that the loan officer asked if I was okay. The business license for our new venture was created. In the space for owner, CEO, my name, Catherine Miller, was proudly printed. But it wasn't a guarantee of success. It was a terrifying contract that meant if we failed, I would bear all the legal responsibility. I could even go to jail. We rented a small, 10 by 10-foot commercial kitchen in a dingy basement in an industrial part of Brooklyn and hung a sign that read, "The Hearth and Home Kitchen." A reckless challenge began. In that cramped, damp kitchen, my daily battle started. And just as I'd expected, I was the only one working. My husband would sit at the counter, legs crossed, playing games on his phone, declaring, "The CEO's job is to see the big picture." Meanwhile, I was up at 4 a.m., driving to the wholesale market to buy fresh produce, then spending the entire day with my hands in cold water, prepping ingredients. The skin on my knuckles cracked and bled from eczema. I didn't even have time to put on a bandage. I just stuffed paper towels inside my rubber gloves and kept working. My husband's idea of helping was to stand over my shoulder and offer advice that made my blood boil. He'd insist we needed to cut corners on ingredients to increase our profit margin, telling me to use cheap, imported vegetables and load up our sauces with MSG. "God, you're so frustrating," he'd yell. Who makes broth from scratch these days? Just dump in some bouillon powder and a ton of sugar. That's all people want. Don't you know how to run a business? Are you trying to bankrupt us? Hearing that, I nearly threw a ladle at his head. I completely ignored his cheap, short-sighted business mentality. I stuck to the methods my mother had taught me, roasting real beef bones for our broth and insisting on using only high-quality, domestic ingredients. I stubbornly chose the honest, albeit harder, path. On top of that, with every early morning delivery, I included a handwritten note inside the insulated box. I know it's hard to find time to eat well while raising kids. I hope a bowl of this warm soup gives you some strength. Catherine. They were simple, heartfelt notes. I never imagined they would touch people's hearts the way they did. Slowly, reviews started appearing on local parent forums. It's like getting a care package from my own mom. The handwritten note made me cry. One by one, the positive comments trickled in. Then, suddenly, my phone started buzzing incessantly with order notifications. Ding! You have a new order. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But the orders went from 10 a day to 100, then 500. I was so busy I barely had time to breathe. The day our monthly revenue surpassed $100,000. I checked our bank account, sank to the kitchen floor, and wept. The moment he got a taste of success, my husband's attitude did a complete 180. It was me who had sweated in the kitchen, me who had developed the recipes, handled the packaging, and managed customer service. But he started acting as if he'd done it all himself. He'd stand in front of the mirror in a new, expensive suit, adjusting his tie. See? What did I tell you? My business sense is unbelievable. From the concept to the marketing timing, I designed this whole thing. You were just the labor, following my orders. You should know how lucky you are. I was dumbfounded. But seeing the money pour into our account, I kept my mouth shut. It was then that I witnessed, firsthand, how money can change a person. The first thing my husband did wasn't to pay off our debts. It was to lease the high-end German luxury car he'd always dreamed of. Not only that, he became a regular at the VIP lounges of high-end department stores, buying up designer shoes, watches, and golf clubs. Meanwhile, my legs were swollen and aching from standing all day, and he never once thought to buy me a simple $5 pain relief patch. He'd come home, toss a pile of shopping bags from Saks Fifth Avenue onto the floor, and look at me with undisguised contempt. He'd pinch his nose as if the smell of food on my work clothes offended him. You're supposed to be a CEO's wife, and you look like that? Try to clean yourself up a little, he'd sneer. It's embarrassing for me to introduce you as my wife. Oh, and I have a magazine interview tomorrow. Don't show up. You have no media skills. You'll just ruin my image. His words felt like a knife in my gut, but looking at the state of the company, I knew I couldn't step away. I couldn't say a word. I just let the anger simmer inside me. And my mother-in-law? As soon as she heard the business was doing well, she swooped in like a vulture. She'd plant herself behind the counter and act like she owned the place. While I was in the kitchen at dawn, making broth, she'd stand behind me with her arms crossed, critiquing whether it was too salty or too bland. She treated me like a servant in front of our employees. It was maddening. One day, in front of everyone, she slapped me hard on the back. Ah, my Ethan has finally made it. He's become a dragon. What did I tell you? My son was destined for great things. You must have saved a country in a past life to be so lucky. You should be grateful to have a husband like him. In her eyes, her son was a business genius, and I was just a freeloader who had gotten lucky. I wanted to rip off my apron and scream, "This is all in my name." But every time, I'd look at our growing bank balance and force myself to stay quiet. As the numbers in our account grew, the emptiness and anxiety in my heart grew even faster. But I tried to bury that anxiety with money, surviving one day at a time. Maybe, even then, I already knew. I knew this sandcastle of success could crumble at any moment, and when it did, I would be the one who got hurt the most. But I couldn't stop. I hypnotized myself into believing that this precarious prosperity was better than poverty, and I continued to dangerously follow behind my husband's runaway train. 2 years had passed since the business took off. The numbers in our bank account had grown exponentially, but the hole in my heart had grown even larger. It wasn't just my husband who had lost his way. The man who had once depended on me so much when we were poor now treated me like dirt, all because he'd grown wings of money. He was barely ever home anymore. He was out 5 nights a week, and on the rare occasions he did come back, it was in the dead of night, just to change clothes and leave again. When I asked, he'd snap. "It's a business meeting." Entertaining clients is part of the job. But a woman's intuition is a powerful thing. When he stumbled through the door in the early morning, he didn't just smell of alcohol. He reeked of a strange woman's perfume. That cloying, sweet scent made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to ignore it. I knew if I confronted him, he'd just turn it around on me. Are you crazy? Who do you think I'm working this hard for? I lied to myself, telling myself he was just stressed from work, that he was just a little lost in the thrill of success. I held on to the vague hope that he would eventually come back to his senses. It was foolish, but at the time, I believed that protecting my marriage was the same as protecting my pride. Then, one afternoon, it happened. My mother-in-law, Sharon, who never called, showed up unannounced and rang the doorbell. On the video intercom, she looked unsettlingly glamorous. This was a woman who used to live in cheap sweatpants from Walmart. Now, she was decked out head to toe in flashy designer brands. And in her hand, she was carrying a large, orange shopping bag from a world-famous luxury brand. My heart sank, but at the same time, a stupid sliver of hope rose within me. Maybe she bought a gift for me, to thank me for all my hard work? She's human. After all, she must have some conscience. With a trembling hand, I opened the door. But the icy chill that greeted me, the moment I opened it shattered my foolish hopes in less than a second. Without even taking off her shoes, she strode into the living room and plopped down on the most prominent spot on the sofa. She then slammed the designer bag down on the coffee table with a loud thud. The sound felt like a slap across my face. She sniffed dismissively. Hey, how much longer are you going to leech off my son? What have you ever done to deserve playing the part of a CEO's wife? If you had any sense, you'd know when to get lost. You're stuck to him like a leech, she continued. I'm here today to put an end to it. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. No gift, just a tirade of insults. As I stood there, frozen, she impatiently upended the shopping bag, and its contents spilled onto the table. It wasn't a glittering handbag or a new dress. It was a single, manila envelope. The two words printed on the front, divorce petition, seemed to burn my eyes. My hands were shaking too much to even pick it up. She gestured at the envelope with her chin. We're filing this tomorrow. My Ethan is now the CEO of a $5 million a year company. Having someone as drab and low class as you by his side makes the company look bad. You have to be on the same level. I will not let you drag my son down any longer. I couldn't believe my ears. A $5 million company? Who built that company? Who woke up before dawn to go to the markets? Who spent all night packaging orders? Who wrote every single one of those handwritten notes that moved customers' hearts? And now, after I had built this company with my own blood and sweat, they were casting me out because I wasn't on their level? This was beyond betrayal. It was something less than human. I wanted to scream, "Where's Ethan? Tell him to come here and say this to my face." But my voice was trapped in my throat. It was obvious what was happening. He was avoiding my calls, hiding behind his mother's skirt while he pulled the strings. That coward. A grown man still hiding behind his mommy. Rage boiled inside me, and tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of her. I bit my lip hard, as if she was enjoying my pained expression. She pulled the documents from the envelope and pointed to the section on financial settlement. Then, with an air of magnanimous charity, she said, "Here, $50,000. That's the $50,000 you took out for the initial loan. We're just paying you back. That should be more than enough for someone like you, don't you think? You came into this marriage with nothing but the clothes on your back. You should be on your knees thanking me for this much. $50,000. My 10 years of devotion, of being the sole provider, my youth and labor that I poured into building this company, none of it was even considered. They hadn't even factored in my 401k and my son's college fund that I'd sacrificed. I was nothing more than a disposable tool, a broken part to be thrown away. The money I spent paying off my husband's debts, the money for raising our child, the money I earned working through the night, where did all that go? They just wanted to call it even with the principal? I was so flabbergasted that a hollow laugh escaped my lips. These people had never considered me family. I was just a tool to be used when needed and discarded without a second thought when my usefulness ran out. When I remained silent, she must have thought I was going to ask for more money, because she preemptively threatened me, her eyes blazing. Don't even think about trying anything funny. If you don't sign this quietly, I'll have you prosecuted for embezzling from the corporate account. I've already spoken to a lawyer. He said if the CEO's wife uses company money for personal expenses, it's a crime. If you want to go to jail, Go ahead and try to fight this. Embezzlement? The records would clearly show the money was used for living expenses and to maintain my husband's lifestyle. And she was going to frame me as a thief? It was as if she was testing the very limits of human depravity. I was so overcome with indignation that I felt my blood boil. I wanted to grab the water glass on the table and hurl it against the wall, to scream until my lungs gave out. But in that moment, a cold, clear thought cut through my rage. If I lose my temper now, I'll be playing right into that old fox's hands. Crying, begging, or fighting was exactly what they wanted to see. Fine, I thought. If this is how you want to play, I'll show you. I'll show you who the real owner is. I took a deep breath and hid my trembling hands beneath my thighs. Then, in a low, steady voice, I looked her directly in the eye. Are you finished, Sharon? $50,000 and a threat of prosecution. You've really thought this through, haven't you? But there's one thing you seem to be mistaken about. A frown creased her forehead. I let a small, contemptuous smile play on my lips. Sharon, do you even know who the CEO of this company is? You seem to have forgotten that your son, Ethan, has such bad credit he can't even get a library card in his own name. Her face instantly hardened. The property deeds, the business license, the loan agreements, the bank accounts the owner listed on every single one of those documents wasn't Ethan Davis. It was Catherine Miller. It was me. These ignorant, newly rich fools had completely forgotten that fact. Drunk on money and blinded by success, they had forgotten the most fundamental truth while they plotted to get rid of me. It was pathetic, but she still couldn't grasp the situation. She started sputtering, still under the delusion that since her son was being called Mr. CEO, he actually was the CEO. How dare you talk back to me? She shrieked. You just latched onto my son's business for a free ride. But there was a faint tremor in her voice. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to admit it. She couldn't accept that her brilliant, amazing son was nothing but an empty shell without his wife's name to stand on. I saw the flicker of anxiety in her eyes and went in for the kill. Go home and tell your son this, Sharon. I'll be the one writing the divorce papers, but the defendant won't be me. It'll be him. And $50,000 for a settlement? Don't make me laugh. I'm going to take every last penny that bastard has. And even that won't be enough. Who do you think is doing who a favor here? Overwhelmed by my sudden change in demeanor, she stumbled backward. You'll regret this. I won't let you get away with it, she yelled as she stormed out. But her retreating figure looked less like a victor and more like a defeated soldier fleeing the battlefield. After she left, I leaned against the front door for a long time. My heart was pounding with fury, but my mind was clearer and colder than ever before. Drunk on their success, those people had forgotten the most crucial fact. Ethan Davis was a name that no financial institution in the United States would touch. He was a credit pariah. While they were treating me like a puppet president, I had never forgotten that the very ground they stood on belonged to me. Calming my shaking hands, I went to my closet and pulled out a briefcase I had hidden deep within a stack of winter blankets. I opened it and laid out the documents. The property deed for our house, the LLC registration, the business loan agreement, the corporate seal. On every single page, the 7 words Chief Executive Officer, Catherine Miller, were printed in bold, clear letters. My husband was listed merely as a director, a title only. Legally, he was just an employee of my company, drawing a salary. Seeing that in black and white, a smile spread across my face. These pieces of paper were now my shield, and they were about to become the sharp spear aimed at their hearts. The next morning, instead of going to the kitchen, I put on a crisp power suit and went to see a lawyer. I had woken up early, pulled my hair back into a severe bun, and applied more makeup than usual. I was a general heading into battle. I placed the thick stack of documents on the lawyer's desk. My first words weren't the typical plea of a distraught wife seeking a divorce. With a firm, clear voice and a fire in my eyes, I said, I'd like to initiate proceedings for the removal of Director Ethan Davis from the board of the Hearth and Home Kitchen, along with a restraining order. I also want to prepare a criminal complaint for embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. I have more than enough evidence. The lawyer reviewed the documents for a long time, then pushed his glasses up his nose and smiled. You're the sole owner, Miss Miller. All legal authority and assets are in your name. What is there to worry about? This isn't even a fight. It's a simple matter of notification. Legally speaking, your husband is just an employee, a nobody. Hearing those words felt like a 10-year-old weight had been lifted from my chest. With a legal confirmation of my absolute victory, I immediately set my plan in motion. First, I cut off their lifeline, the money. I called our business bank and had all corporate accounts frozen. I requested new security tokens and debit cards, invalidating all existing access. Then, one by one, I reported the 5 corporate credit cards that he and my mother-in-law had been using so extravagantly as lost or stolen. Yes, I believe they've been compromised. Please cancel them immediately, I told the customer service representative, my voice filled with a calm satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. With that one phone call, the wealth and luxury they had been enjoying vanished like a mirage. Next, I went home and opened the tablet my husband kept in his home office. It was usually locked, but I knew his password would be something painfully simple. I tried his birthday, and with a soft click, the screen unlocked. I scoffed. Pandora's box was open. The photo gallery and messaging apps contained truths far uglier and more depraved than I could have imagined. The other woman was our company's accountant, Jessica. I had always liked her. She was smart and efficient. To think she was sleeping with my husband behind my back filled me with a searing sense of betrayal. Worse, their text messages were filled with mockery and insults directed at me. My hands trembled as I read their conversation. Ethan, I'm going to kick that frumpy hag to the curb soon. You're going to help me, right? You trust me? We can start our new life together. Jessica. Of course, babe. I trust you. But what if she puts up a fight? She's stubborn. Ethan. That's why we frame her for embezzlement first. Like you said, you can cook the books, right? Jessica. Lol, that's child's play for me. I'll start moving some money from the accounts in her name. We can use it to pin everything on her later. Ethan. You're a genius, Jess. God, I love you. Let's celebrate at the plaza this weekend. Jessica. Perfect. I'll wear the new bag you bought me. Love you, sweetie. These bastards were plotting to frame me for embezzlement. Right then and there, I backed up every single message, every photo, and the Excel files where Jessica had detailed their scheme to siphon off company funds. This wasn't just evidence of an affair. It was proof of a conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. I was no longer the defendant in a divorce case. I was now the plaintiff, preparing to file for a fault-based divorce, sue for damages, and file a separate lawsuit against the mistress for alienation of affection. When I sent the evidence to my lawyer, he whistled. With this, he said, your husband won't just be broke. He'll be looking at some serious jail time. That evening, the show began. A flood of card decline notifications started hitting my phone. I checked a location tracking app I'd installed on his phone ages ago. He was at a 5-star hotel in Midtown Manhattan. He and Jessica were probably in the middle of a glamorous check-in. The thought made me grin. I could picture it perfectly. My husband, standing under the glittering chandeliers of the hotel lobby, confidently handing over the corporate black card. And then the clerk saying, I'm sorry, sir, but this card has been reported stolen. We can't process the payment. I imagined the color draining from his face as he insisted, that's impossible. Try it again. Your machine must be broken. Jessica would be standing beside him, dying of embarrassment. The hotel staff would be looking at them with contempt. He'd pull out another card and another, only to be met with declined and exceeded limit. With no cash on them, the broke phonies would be unceremoniously kicked out of the hotel. I wondered if they appreciated the little gift I'd sent them. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, my phone was ringing off the hook. It was my mother-in-law. Normally, I would have ignored her, but today, I wanted to hear her voice. I put the call on speaker. A shriek pierced through the phone, so loud it almost split my eardrum. Catherine, are you out of your mind? Ethan's cards aren't working. Did you do this? Unblock them right now. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for my son? I leaned back comfortably on my sofa, examining my nails, and replied in a sweet, leisurely tone. Sharon, calm down. You'll give yourself a heart attack. Yes. I blocked them. It's my company's money. I can block it if I want to. What's it to you? And tell your son, if he has a problem with it, he can use his own damn money to pay for things. Oh, and I hope he and Jessica figured out how to split the hotel bill. Tell them they can always go to a cheap motel if they're broke. What? What did you say? How did you know about Jessica? You vicious bitch. I'm going to kill you. I'm coming over there right now to rip every hair out of your head. As she sputtered in incoherent rage, I coolly ended the call. It was satisfying, but this was just the beginning. Rats backed into a corner always act predictably. They would lose their minds and come looking for me. I was counting on it. Just as I predicted, about an hour later, a commotion started outside. I could hear my husband and mother-in-law pounding on the front door of my mother's house, their voices echoing through the quiet street. They sounded like cornered animals. "Catherine, open this door. Open the damn door. How dare you humiliate me? Get out here and beg for forgiveness before I kill you." Their screaming, for the whole neighborhood to hear, was quite a performance. My own mother was pale with fear, trembling. I led her to her bedroom, handed her a warm glass of water, and reassured her. "Mom, don't worry. I knew this would happen. Stay in here and don't come out no matter what. I'll handle this." I squeezed her trembling hand, then walked back to the living room with a cold smile. The truth was, I had already called the police before they even arrived. I told the dispatcher my estranged husband and his mother were trying to break in and were threatening me with a weapon. The weapon part was an exaggeration, of course, but the murderous look in their eyes and their violent language felt just as dangerous. I needed the police to come quickly. When I opened the front door, they looked ready to pounce. My husband's eyes were bloodshot as he lunged, screaming obscenities, trying to grab me by the throat. My mother-in-law, her nails out like claws, came at my hair. They looked like ghouls. But in that exact moment, the wail of a siren grew louder, and a police car screeched to a halt at the end of the block. Two burly officers emerged. The expressions on my husband's and mother-in-law's faces were priceless. The bravado vanished instantly, replaced by a pasty white shock. My husband's hand, which had been reaching for my neck, dropped limply to his side. My mother-in-law froze, her hand still raised in midair. I quickly ducked behind one of the officers, put on my most pitiful, terrified expression, and began my performance. Tears were, of course, part of the act. "Officers, thank God," I sobbed. "It's them. They demanded a divorce, and now they've tracked me down to my mother's house. They threatened to kill me. They were trying to break down the door. I'm so scared. Please, help me." My husband, looking utterly bewildered, started yelling. "No, that's not true. We didn't threaten anyone. This woman is a con artist. She froze all our money. We just came here to talk to her. Officer, she canceled my corporate credit card." I was publicly humiliated. One of the officers cut him off, his voice firm and authoritative. "Sir, you can take that up in civil court. Right now, we have a complaint for trespassing, harassment, and disturbing the peace. If you cause any more trouble, we can arrest you on the spot. I need to see your ID." At the word arrest, my mother-in-law's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the pavement, wailing dramatically. "Oh, my life. I married my son to a monster, and now I'm going to jail. Neighbors, look at this evil woman. She's calling the police on her own mother-in-law." But the neighbors, who had come out to see the commotion, knew me as a quiet, hard-working woman. They were already shaking their heads and muttering about the two maniacs causing a scene. My husband just stood there, his head bowed, looking for a hole to crawl into. Looking down at him, I felt a surge of triumph. There you go. This is the real power of the woman you underestimated. You thought I was nothing without money or connections. Well, I have the law of the land on my side. As the police officers took each of them by an arm and began to lead them away, they continued to scream about how unfair it all was. But I stopped them with a cold, level gaze. I couldn't just let them go. The humiliation and pain they had inflicted on me ran too deep. And more importantly, I wasn't about to let them walk away dressed in the expensive finery bought with my hard-earned money. I politely asked the officers to wait for just a moment. Then, with my arms crossed, I slowly walked toward my husband. Seeing me approach, he must have thought I'd had a change of heart, that I was going to forgive him. His eyes took on a pathetic, pleading look. But the words that came out of my mouth were not of mercy, but of final judgment. I flicked a finger at the lapel of his gleaming, Italian-made designer suit. "Hold on. It would be a shame for you to leave just like that," I said, my voice low and clear. "That custom suit you're wearing, the Swiss watch on your wrist, the handmade leather shoes on your feet. Who paid for all that? They were all bought with my corporate card, listed as company assets, weren't they?" He flinched, clutching his tie. "This is my suit. I'm wearing it. What are you talking about? Are you really so petty you're going to take the clothes off my back?" I pulled out the printouts I had prepared, the corporate card statements, and the list of company assets, and waved them in his face. "See the dates and the amounts? You expensed all of this as business development. When a terminated employee walks off with company property, do you know what that's called? Theft. Embezzlement. I gestured to the police officers. The police are right here. If you'd like to be arrested as a common thief, by all means, keep wearing it. It's no skin off my back. It'll just add another charge to your record. His face turned ashen. His lips trembled with fury, but the fear of going to jail was clearly stronger. With shaking hands, he began to unbutton his jacket. As the neighbors watched and whispered, he was forced to strip, the stares feeling like 1,000 tiny needles. He threw the jacket on the ground, ripped off his tie, and undid his shirt button by button. His posturing and pride were stripped away along with his clothes. When I told him to take off his pants, he shrieked, "How am I supposed to go anywhere in my underwear?" I didn't even blink. "That's your problem, not mine," I said flatly. In the end, there he stood in the cold November air, shivering in a thin white undershirt and a pair of boxer shorts. I took the watch from his wrist and the car keys from his pocket. The moment I held the smart key to his precious foreign car in my hand, I could almost hear the sound of his last shred of dignity shattering. Next, it was my mother-in-law's turn. She tried to slink away, but she couldn't escape my watchful eye. That handbag she was clutching? A $5,000 designer bag my husband had bought her last month, expensed as a client gift. I snatched the strap from her hand. "And where do you think you're going, Sharon? You'll be leaving that bag behind. And those shoes. Oh, and that silk scarf around your neck. Also on the corporate card. I see. Take it all off. Now." She let out a strangled scream. "You monster. Are you really going to strip your mother-in-law naked and throw her out on the street? You'll be cursed for this. How can you take this from me?" But when I made a move to take them by force, she had no choice. She threw the bag to the ground and kicked off her shoes. In the end, the two of them, stripped of all their luxurious accessories, were escorted away. My husband in his underwear, my mother-in-law in her thin clothes and bare feet. The neighborhood kids pointed and laughed, and the adults clucked their tongues in disapproval as they disappeared down the street. Looking at the pile of designer clothes and accessories left in the middle of the road, I kicked them aside like trash. I felt more than just relief. I felt like I could fly. A few days later, the inevitable happened. With nowhere else to go, the two of them were back at my mother's door. On the video intercom, they looked even more wretched than before. Unwashed, matted hair, ill-fitting tracksuits they must have gotten from a charity bin, and hollow, desperate eyes. They looked like homeless people. With no cards and no cash, they couldn't even afford a meal at a diner, let alone a room for the night. The moment I opened the door, they fell to their knees, grabbing at my pant legs like I was their last hope. "Catherine, I was wrong," my husband blubbered. "Please, just give me one more chance." I must have been possessed. Think of the 10 years we spent together. My mother-in-law, all pride forgotten, tried desperately to grab my hand. "My dear, sweet daughter, I was an old fool. I didn't appreciate what a good person you were. Please, just let us in. We have nowhere to go." Hearing their desperate pleas didn't soften my heart. In fact, it made it colder, as the memories of the past 10 years of neglect and abuse flooded back. When I was crying because I had no money for rice, when I was frantic because I couldn't afford formula for our baby, where were they? They were living high on my dime, looking down on me, trampling all over me, and now they were hungry and wanted me to feed them? I pulled my leg away and looked down at them with a sneer. "Oh, what a shame. We only have food for humans in this house. We don't serve animals. In our 10 years together, that ended the moment you stabbed me in the back. Like mother, like son. It seems losing everything is the only way you two can see reality. Now get lost before I call the police again." I slammed the door on their wails. That was the last time I ever spoke to them in person. The ensuing court battle was a slaughter. On the day of the hearing, my husband showed up with a court-appointed lawyer and made the most ludicrous claims. He argued that although the company was in my name, its success was due to his management skills and demanded 50% of the assets. But I had come prepared. I presented the judge with a mountain of evidence: my loan documents, my handwritten recipe notebooks, copies of the personal notes I sent to customers, and, of course, the credit card statements detailing his lavish spending and the text messages with his mistress. All the evidence pointed to one undeniable truth: the heart, soul, and legal ownership of this company belonged to Catherine Miller. The judge's voice echoed solemnly through the courtroom as he read the verdict. "The court finds no evidence to support the defendant, Ethan Davis's contribution to the company's success. The plaintiff, Catherine Miller, is clearly established as the de facto founder and sole proprietor. Furthermore, the defendant is the at-fault party in this divorce due to financial deception and infidelity. His claim for asset division is hereby denied. The defendant is ordered to pay the plaintiff $50,000 in damages. Bang! The sound of the gavel sealed his fate. My husband's legs buckled, and he collapsed into his chair. In that instant, he became a penniless debtor. When my mother-in-law heard the news, she suffered a stroke from the shock. I received a call that she had been rushed to the emergency room, but I didn't feel a thing. When the hospital's billing department called me and said, "We need the guardian to come in and settle the bill," I replied calmly, "I am not her guardian. We are divorced. I am a stranger to her. Call her son." "Oh, wait, he doesn't have any money either." "What a pity. I guess you'll just have to discharge her onto the street." From what I heard later, my mother-in-law was kicked out of the hospital without proper discharge procedures because no one could pay her bill. The woman who had spent her life bragging about her wonderful son was abandoned in her old age, without a penny to her name, because of that very son. Their downfall was absolute and complete. Walking out of the courthouse, I looked up at the sky. It was a brilliant, clear blue, as if it were blessing me. A profound sense of liberation washed over me. I had, finally, completely, excised the cancer of poverty and the parasitic leeches from my life. But my revenge wasn't quite over. I deserved to savor the sight of them hitting rock bottom just a little bit longer. To celebrate my perfect victory, I started the engine of my car. It was time to go find my real life. Before the ink on the divorce decree was even dry, I made a bold decision. I transitioned the company to a professional management structure. I no longer wanted to live as a money-making machine or as someone else's facade. Most importantly, I wanted to spend real, quality time with my son, Leo, to make up for the 10 years I couldn't be a proper mother. The simple, everyday things, making him a warm breakfast, having snacks ready when he got home from school, were luxuries I had only dreamed of. We moved into a beautiful apartment in a secure, gated community. There, for the first time, I could finally breathe, leaving the war of my past life behind. But the peace didn't last long. The demons I had cast down to the depths began their final, desperate struggle. Ethan, the ex-husband whose name alone made my blood run cold, was, as expected, living a life in the gutter. Now broke, he still refused to get a real job. Instead, I heard he was hanging around underground poker games, chasing a 1 in a million jackpot to reverse his fortunes. He had borrowed money from loan sharks and, inevitably, ended up with a mountain of debt, constantly on the run. When I heard the news through the grapevine, I just shook my head. People really don't change. He'll always be trash. But I never imagined that piece of trash would dare to lay a hand on my son, the person more precious to me than my own life. One afternoon, I got a frantic call from Leo's teacher. Her voice on the other end was strained with panic. "Mrs. Miller? A man claiming to be Leo's father is here at the school gate. But something's not right. He smells of alcohol. And his eyes. He's trying to forcibly take Leo with him. You need to get here, fast." The world went white. My hands and feet turned to ice. My heart plummeted. But I grabbed my car keys with a trembling hand and sped toward the school. How dare he touch my son? I'll kill him. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my foot pressing the accelerator filled with a murderous rage. When I arrived at the school, I saw something I couldn't believe. My ex-husband, looking disheveled and filthy, was roughly pulling at Leo's arm. I expected to see my son crying and terrified, but my assumption was completely wrong. My Leo was far stronger and braver than I had ever known. In front of all his friends and their parents, Leo wrenched his arm free and shouted in a clear, ringing voice, "Let go of me. Who are you? My dad is dead, and you're the thief who stole my mom's money. Go away before I call the police." I was floored to hear those words come out of my 10-year-old's mouth. Ethan's face turned beet red with a mixture of shock and fury. "You little brat. How dare you call your own father a thief? After everything I've done for you." He raised his hand to strike my son. In that split second, as his filthy hand was about to connect with my child's face, I was about to scream, "No, don't you dare touch him." But before I could even move, a man in a tracksuit shot out of nowhere, grabbed Ethan's arm, and twisted it behind his back, neutralizing him in an instant. It was the school's gym teacher. Ethan cried out in pain and was thrown to the ground. My son was completely unharmed. I ran to him and pulled him into my arms. Only then did the tension break, and he burst into tears, sobbing into my shoulder. Mommy, I was so scared. I was trying to protect you. I don't want him to hurt you anymore. I held his small body as tightly as I could, my own tears mixing with his. Then I looked up at the pathetic man crumpled on the pavement, and I felt a fire ignite in my eyes. I asked the gym teacher to hold him for a few more minutes and called the police. From the ground, Ethan pleaded, Catherine, I'm sorry. The loan sharks. They're going to kill me. Please, for Leo's sake, just help me this one time. Hide me. I didn't even acknowledge him. For Leo's sake? Don't you dare speak my son's name with that filthy mouth. You're already dead to us. Whether the loan sharks get you or not is none of my concern. In the end, he was dragged away from the front of the school and shoved into a police car. After being publicly humiliated in front of a crowd of children, he would never dare show his face there again. Or perhaps he'd go to jail, or be taken by the loan sharks, and I'd never see him again. Either way was fine with me. With a husband like that, it was no surprise his mother was a mess too. A few days later, I got a report from my office about a disturbance in the lobby. I pulled up the security camera feed. The silhouette was familiar. My ex-mother-in-law, Sharon, with a stained t-shirt, tangled hair, and a crazed look in her eyes. She was lying spread-eagled on the lobby floor, causing a massive scene. She was grabbing at the legs of employees walking by, screaming accusations. It's a travesty, she wailed, pounding the marble floor. That witch of a daughter-in-law stole my son's company. She kicked him out. She's a monster. Give me back my money. We worked so hard to build this company. I almost laughed. It was absurd. But my employees already knew the whole story. I had been transparent with them about what happened during the divorce. And they respected me not as a victim, but as a survivor. They treated her not as the former chairman's mother, but as a deranged trespasser. They ignored her completely, walking past as if she were invisible. Enraged at being ignored, she grabbed a decorative plant from the reception desk and hurled it to the floor. Are you all deaf? Get your boss out here. Tell Catherine to come out. If she doesn't, I'll kill myself right here. In an instant, the security team was on her. Ma'am, you can't do this here. We will call the police for destruction of property and disturbing the peace. Please leave immediately. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? I'm the CEO's mother. How dare you touch me? But an old woman was no match for two well-built security guards. They lifted her by her arms and legs and carried her, like a sack of potatoes, out of the lobby. She was tossed unceremoniously through the automatic doors. She pressed her face against the glass, screaming curses, but the doors remained firmly shut. Eventually, the police arrived, and she met the same fate as her son. I received dozens of calls from the police station, begging me to come down, to press charges, to at least talk to her. The detective called and asked, "The suspect is asking to speak with you. Should I put her on?" I refused, my voice firm. "No, I have nothing to say to that woman. Please proceed according to the law. I will not be negotiating a settlement." Then I blocked her number. She wasn't worth my energy. Even yelling at her face-to-face would be a waste of breath. Letting the law take its course was the best revenge. In the end, without a settlement, she spent several days in a holding cell. The story spread like wildfire through her old neighborhood, and she was utterly disgraced. At the grocery store, at the senior center, people whispered, "That's the old hag who tried to swindle her daughter-in-law and ended up in jail. Her son's a degenerate gambler, and she got kicked out of her daughter-in-law's company for causing a scene." Her carefully crafted image of a respectable woman was shattered, revealing the crazy old bat she truly was. She became a total outcast. I heard she was evicted from her apartment and ended up in a tiny, dilapidated room in a single-room occupancy hotel. The woman who spent her life doting on her son and exploiting her daughter-in-law was now paying for her sins, alone and cold. The news I heard a few days later was even more satisfying. After being released from jail, Ethan was unable to go home. He was essentially kidnapped by his loan sharks and put on an Alaskan fishing trawler. They told him he would work off his debt with his body. I don't know exactly where he went, and I don't want to know. All that matters is that he has disappeared to a place where he can no longer have even a 1% influence on my life or my son's. Instead of his beloved designer suits, he'll be wearing foul-smelling work gear, floundering in a sea of debt he'll never repay. That was the ending he chose for his life. Now, it was time for the final step. I went to family court to legally change my son's last name. Not Leo Davis, but Leo Miller. Giving him my surname was more than just changing a word on a document. It was about erasing the stain of that man's bloodline from my son's life. A declaration and a promise that I would raise him solely with my love and my strength. I stood before the judge and stated my case with confidence. Your Honor, the child's biological father has forfeited his parental rights through his history of gambling, infidelity, and domestic abuse. I request that my son be allowed to take my surname, so that he may live a confident life, free from the trauma of his past. I have more than sufficient financial means and the will to raise my child to be an outstanding citizen on my own. The court ruled in my favor. A few days later, I received a new birth certificate. It listed Catherine Miller as head of household and Leo Miller as child. The day I received that document, I took Leo to the most expensive steakhouse in the city. Leo, I said, it's just the two of us now. Mommy will love you enough for two parents. He chewed his steak and smiled brightly. I know, Mom. I only need you. And I like your name better anyway. Leo Miller. That's me now. Looking at his angelic smile, I made a new vow. I would never again be fooled by an empty shell, whether out of fear of poverty or out of loneliness. I would never again waste my life. The demons were sent to hell. We were taking our first steps toward heaven. I had nothing left to fear. The springtime of my life was just beginning. 3 years have passed since then. After the hellish court battles ended, I never looked back. I only looked forward. The Hearth and Home Kitchen, the brand I started with my own name on the line, grew into a national franchise. Eventually, I received an acquisition offer from one of the country's largest food conglomerates. The day I signed the M&A contract, the view of the New York City skyline from the boardroom window was exceptionally clear and bright. With a trembling hand, I signed my name, Catherine Miller, CEO. Moments later, a sum of money so large I could never spend it all in a lifetime was deposited into my bank account. When the notification pinged on my phone, the memory of that winter day in 2008, of the red foreclosure notices, flashed before my eyes like a movie. A lump formed in my throat. I could finally speak to that terrified 11-year-old girl and tell her, it's okay now. You're safe. You will never have to cry because of money again. As I shook hands with the chairman, I made another promise to myself. I would no longer be a person who chases money. I would be a person who commands it. The first thing I did was buy a gift for myself, a reward for 10 years of suffering. For the girl who had lived in cramped, moldy apartments. I bought a penthouse apartment with a panoramic view of Central Park. The day I first walked into that home after paying for it, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering cityscape with a glass of wine in my hand. For the first time, I understood the sweet, intoxicating taste of success. Even the cold touch of the marble floors felt warm. The joy of filling the enormous walk-in closet with clothes I loved was indescribable. The designer bags I couldn't buy because of my husband, the dresses I never dared to try on, the luggage for the trips my son and I would now take. I filled shopping carts to the brim, and the feeling of liberation with every swipe of my card was more potent than any drug. And for my parents, who had spent their lives bent under the weight of debt, I bought a handsome 5-story brownstone in a prime city location. The day I handed my mother the deed, she collapsed to the floor and sobbed. I held her rough hands and cried with her. Catherine, my baby, how could you? We never gave you anything. We only left you with our debts. Mom, I said, no more worrying about landlords. You're the landlord now. I can afford it. And Dad, you can quit that security guard job. You and Mom should travel the world. I'll pay for everything. My father just patted my shoulders silently, wiping away his tears. On that day, our family finally broke free from the chains of poverty. That night, as we all gathered for a barbecue, laughing and celebrating, I finally let go of the burden of being the provider and simply enjoyed being a daughter and a mother. My greatest treasure, my son Leo, has also become remarkably brighter. Immediately after the divorce, he suffered from nightmares and anxiety. But with consistent therapy and my devoted care, he has grown into a confident and spirited boy, more mature than his peers. We go camping on weekends, and he's learning to swim. He's become strong in both body and mind. He no longer asks about his father. One evening, he showed me a drawing he made at school, and my heart swelled. In the picture, he and I were standing under a big tree, smiling. The space where a father would have been was empty, but he had filled it with warm sunshine and colorful flowers. Leo wrapped his arms around my neck and whispered in my ear, Mom, I don't need a dad. When my friends brag about their dads, I don't feel jealous at all. You're my mom and my dad. You teach me how to be tough. You make lots of money. You cook the best food, and you're a great driver. I only need you. When I grow up, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to be a real, amazing man. Not like him. And I'll make sure you have everything you want. Tears streamed down my face. I had always worried that the absence of a father would be a wound for him, but he had already filled that void with my love. Yes, my love. I will be your father and your mother. We became each other's staunchest supporters, building our happiness day by day. I no longer felt intimidated at parent-teacher meetings. In fact, as a successful female CEO, I became an object of admiration for the other mothers. I shared my story openly, helping to break down the prejudices against single moms. Then one day, a scene on the street stopped me in my tracks. In the middle of a busy street in Midtown, on a chilly day, I saw a haggard-looking middle-aged man in a worn-out jacket, huddled over, handing out flyers. People would brush past him, annoyed, but he would bow obsequiously. Please, just take one. Grand opening special. Come have a meal. He was practically begging. There was something familiar about his stoop posture. When he turned his head, I froze. Graying hair, deep-set wrinkles, and eyes clouded over by a hard life. It was Ethan, the man who once refused to wear anything that wasn't a designer label, who swaggered around with his hand on the wheel of a luxury car, was now reduced to groveling on a street corner for a few dollars an hour. I didn't know if he had run away from the trawler or if he'd been released after paying his debt, but he looked no different from a homeless man. His hands were grimy, and his sneakers were worn through at the soles. On his wrist, where a Rolex used to be, there was now a cheap rubber band watch. As I stood there, he saw me. Our eyes met. He flinched as if he'd been electrocuted, then quickly looked down, using the stack of flyers to hide his face. He didn't dare approach me, just stumbled backward as if looking for a hole to disappear into. Watching him, I took a moment to examine my own feelings. Anger? No, I wasn't even angry anymore. Hatred? He wasn't worth the energy. A desire for revenge? It was already over. All I felt was a faint, bitter taste in my mouth. To think I trusted a man like that. To think I dedicated my 20s and 30s to him. To think I scrambled and fought for the love of such an empty shell. What a waste of my youth. It was a hollow feeling, but at the same time, I had to admit it. It was because of those 10 hellish years. Because of the time I spent living with such fierce determination that the strong, shining Catherine of today could exist. He was the wrong answer in the story of my life. But in the process of erasing him, I learned how to find the right one. I didn't speak to him. I simply turned and walked away. He was a deleted file in my life, nothing more than a passerby. I had no curiosity about the expression on his face as he watched me go. Since then, a new person has come into my life. He's the CEO of an investment firm I met through work. He went through a similar painful divorce and is raising his child alone. He respects my abilities and has become a good friend to Leo. We met professionally, but our values aligned so perfectly. And most importantly, he saw me not just as someone's mother, but as Catherine, the woman. My heart opened to his warmth. After a few dates, he cautiously brought up the idea of remarriage. I smiled and declined. You know, I'm really happy with my life right now, I told him. Being someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, once was more than enough. I have no desire to go back to a life of worrying about in-laws, dealing with holiday stress, and sacrificing myself. Can't we just enjoy being good friends and lovers? Keep it cool, just date? He was a little surprised, but he respected my wishes. If that's what you want, Catherine, I'll respect that. We don't need a legal contract to love and support each other. I realize you can love and be loved without being bound by the institution of marriage, without a piece of paper. I am more than satisfied with my current life, where we play golf on the weekends and explore new restaurants, enjoying only the thrilling parts of a relationship. There are no in-laws to please, no husband to cook for. It's a life where I am the sole owner. On a sun-drenched weekend afternoon, I started the engine of my dream car, a red convertible. In my garage, in the passenger seat, Leo, wearing sunglasses, shouted, "Let's go! Mom, are we going to Six Flags today?" With a powerful roar of the engine, we sped down the highway. The cool wind whipped through my hair, and in the rearview mirror, I saw my own reflection, smiling more brightly than ever before. Leo sang along to the music on the radio, and I hummed along with him, pressing my foot on the accelerator. The Catherine, who used to cry in a corner, is gone. Goodbye to the foolish girl who clung to an empty shell out of fear of a foreclosure notice. Goodbye forever to the cowardly girl who begged for love because she was afraid of being poor. From now on, I will live not as someone's wife or someone's daughter-in-law, but as Catherine Miller, a woman who shines on her own. Warm sunlight fell on my hands as I gripped the steering wheel. It felt like a brilliant spotlight, blessing the road ahead. The springtime of my life will last forever, starting from this very moment. Hold on tight, Leo. Mom's going faster. Whoa, you're the best, Mom. Our laughter carried on the wind, spreading far and wide. This was the real happiness I had always dreamed of. Thank you for listening to my story. Goodbye. And that's the story for today. The story of a woman who, as a child of the 2008 financial crisis, was haunted by the trauma of poverty and rushed into a marriage, only to endure 10 years of hardship before finally shattering the shell that imprisoned her and becoming a shining gem in her own right. As I listened to her story, I felt a fire ignite in my own heart. How about you all? I'm sure many of you felt Catherine's rage, shed tears at her desperation, and finally applauded her triumphant, satisfying revenge. That's how life is sometimes. We make wrong choices, and as a consequence, we have to endure harsh winters. For Catherine, those 10 years might have felt like a wrong answer she wished she could erase. But she didn't just erase it. She took a red pen and, on top of that mistake, she boldly wrote the correct answer herself. She bid farewell to the version of herself who tried to lean on someone else out of fear. And with her own strength, she seized wealth, happiness, and a future for her child. Her story is more than just a revenge tale. It resonates with a powerful message of empowerment. Goodbye to the foolish girl who clung to an empty shell out of fear. Catherine's final declaration echoes in my mind. If there is anyone out there who feels lost, living in someone else's shadow, or trapped in a hollow relationship, I hope Catherine's story gives you a small measure of courage. It reminds us that our true spring doesn't arrive when someone else brings it to us, but when we take the wheel of our own lives and press the accelerator. Catherine is no longer someone's wife or someone's daughter-in-law. She is simply Catherine, a confident woman driving her red convertible with her beloved son, Leo. From her penthouse overlooking the city, we sincerely cheer for the brilliant second act of her life that lies ahead. And to all our listeners who have shared in Catherine's journey of joy and sorrow, your warm support will be another ray of sunshine for her. Please leave a comment of support for Catherine. It will be a great comfort to her. Thank you for being with us until the end.